Welcome to this episode of Raising Teens Up podcast. And our guests today are Sarah Long and Katharine Hill. Great to have you with us, and welcome also to you. And Sarah and Katharine, we've got a letter from a mum to consider today. I'm at my wit's end. It seems my 15-year-old daughter has just become fashion conscious and decided to wear her school skirt very short by rolling it up several times. I've noticed at the weekend she's begun to wear her clothes in what I would describe as a provocative style. When I challenge her, she says I'm old-fashioned, this is what everybody is wearing. But with regard to her school skirt, she tells me if she doesn't roll it up, she'll get bullied. Katharine, do you have any sympathy with this mum and what she's going through?
I so do. I really do sympathise. You know, with our daughter, I remember having those kind of issues, you know, skirt being rolled up and not the right kind of shoes and all that kind of thing. So, but there's a lot going on there, isn't there? There's the mum, worrying about what the child looks like for whatever reason. She mentions that she thinks she might be dressing a bit provocatively, but also there's that question of bullying, which is important to think about. And then finally, maybe that mum is thinking a little bit more about what other parents are thinking about how she's letting her child dress than about her relationship with her daughter. So much going on, but I really do sympathise.
Now, Sarah, you're a little bit near the daughter's age than Katharine or myself. Do you have some sympathy with her?
Yeah, of course I do. I was a skirt roller for a period of time. Yeah, not too short, but the skirt was a bit long. It didn't look good. If you rolled it a couple of times, it was more flattering. And so I think a lot of young people are having to negotiate school uniform and the fact that it's not really made to enhance your figure, alongside a period of life where they're trying to figure out, what does it mean for me to be attractive? How do I fit in? Do people find me interesting and attractive? All of those questions. And you've got those two things happening at once. And then you've got the dynamic at home with a parent who wants to keep a child safe, wants them to dress appropriately, wants them to give a good impression, but then a child whose priorities might be slightly different as well. So I think it's a big challenge and really common. Tell
me if you think this is right. I can imagine that this girl on weekends wants to be fashion conscious, but I think the school skirt thing is much more wanting to be part of a group. She just doesn't want to. She doesn't want a skirt down to her ankles if her mates have got them above her knees. That must be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real challenge. To fit in. So there was a school recently that massively enforced its uniform code, and they had young people coming up to them and saying, thank you so much for being so hard on this, because when we started this school and we were wearing appropriate uniform, we got picked on for not fitting in with how everyone else looked. So actually how you look in school is a big deal, and it can be a really difficult dynamic for a young person to navigate. So if this girl is in a context where all of the rest of the girls are rolling up their skirts, fitting in really, really matters when you're a young person. And so there's a big dynamic there happening that is much more complex than just wanting to look provocative, which may not be anywhere near what she's thinking. It might purely be about fitting in instead.
Katharine, a moment ago you mentioned that this mum might be looking over her shoulder, wondering what other people were making of her parenting. Talk to us a bit more about that.
Well, there's one occasion I remember really clearly, and our daughter was about 15, and she'd asked me if she could have her nose pierced, and for whatever reason, I said no. But actually, quite out of character, she went off and she had it done. She was with a friend, and they came back. We were at home, and it was a family party. They walked in, they were wearing these new lime bright green sweatshirts, and it was a real statement. Walked into the room, and I saw this nose piercing, and I said, is that real? And she said yes, and I said, take it out, and she said no, and I was stuck. And I realised then that I had got that very wrong, but also my reason for telling her to take it out and for being cross, or partly I told her not to do it, but the real reason was I was worrying about what other parents thought about that decision. And I guess this is going on a bit for this mum as well, with the kind of clothes maybe that her daughter's choosing to wear. So it's normal, but it's hard.
As you told the story, it's like a horror movie, isn't it? Because we've all been there. Well, certainly I've been there, where you just pick this battle. And you know, the second you've picked it, you know you probably shouldn't have. Yeah. You know, one dad said to me, I said to my son, the kid came home with his hair dyed pink. And he said, you will never live under this roof while you've got pink hair. And he said, suddenly, the kid was about 16, I think, 17. And he said, I heard the door slam. and he said, I almost lost my child over some silly pink hair. And that's the balance in it all, isn't it? You know, we've got the right, haven't we? We've got the duty, actually, to tell our children what we think, but it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and in this case, it's really interesting that actually that it's a clash between two people trying to fit into two different social contexts. So a parent who might be quite worried about what their peer group thinks about what their daughter is doing, and then a daughter who's quite worried about what her peer group thinks of what she's wearing. And one of the difficulties is that the two set of expectations, the two needs don't meet, they clash. And I think for a parent, at least being able to internally acknowledge that that might be going on for you is really important. That doesn't mean that it's wrong, it doesn't mean that your decision should change, but actually realising that that dynamic is playing out within you can help you empathise with your child and the way that they are feeling pressurised to make certain decisions, perhaps. Particularly if there's some pressure around girls being mean or being bullied around what they wear, it gives you a fresh perspective on what might be happening for your daughter when she's rolling her skirt up, perhaps.
So let's stay with you for a moment. How worried would you be about the bullying comment?
It's one of those things that it could be a throwaway comment, kind of a bit of exaggerated language around some of the girls are just a little bit catty. It might be one of those things, but I would never count on that as a parent. If your child mentions bullying, if they drop that into a conversation, it's a moment to just clock it and think that's something I need to kind of open up and keep talking about, because actually we know statistically that a lot of young people experience bullying at some point. So there's a certain normal fact of life, but actually it has a huge impact on young people's well-being. And this might be the first time that their daughter has dared to drop into a conversation that actually that's something that's going on underneath the surface. And you just don't want to miss it, do you? You don't want to miss that little hint, that little call for help.
Or even the chance, simply just to begin talking about it.
Yeah.
Katharine, you know, the fashion thing on the weekend, we understand that, but do you think the rolling up the skirt thing has got a lot more to do with just wanting to be part of that peer group, this desperate need to belong?
I think it is. I mean, I think, you know, we all, as we've said, we all want to belong. We want to fit in. And particularly maybe if she's not feeling great about herself, maybe she's feeling a bit insecure, actually that's a way that she can do something and take a bit of control and, you know, be able then to fit in, to be like other people. So definitely, I think it's part of that.
But what do you do about it as a mum, as a dad? You know, you understand they want to fit in. You think their skirts are too short.
Yeah, and I think realising, isn't it, that this probably isn't about the skirt, actually. This is about a lot of other stuff. And as a parent, just trying to be there and to have those little conversations about the things, about identity, about self-esteem, and just dropping them in along the way. Well, I heard of one mum, actually, who had this exact situation, and she took her daughter out. They went out shopping together and they managed, I don't know how they did, because my attempts at doing this sort of thing were never this successful, but they did manage to find a skirt that they were both happy with, that was a lot shorter than the skirt she'd had before, that the school were okay with as well. So in that situation, that was a really good win-win, but that is not always possible. Yeah. So I think, you know, we've talked a bit about this girl wanting to find her identity, and just maybe thinking about the different ways that we can help our children, our young people do that.
Yeah. So looking at ways of building confidence that aren't just about telling your daughter that she's beautiful, but actually is she involved in team sports, in drama and activities? Where does she do things that she's good at and can grow in confidence in her abilities as well as her appearance? So the Girl Guides did a survey and they found of young women, 42% of young women said the hardest part of being a young woman was the pressure on their appearance, the pressure to look good. And I think as parents, you can meet that head on by engaging with that, but you can also create space where young people are valued for the whole of their being, for more than just their appearance, and where they can grow in confidence in their other abilities, so that when they walk into these contexts where they maybe don't look the same as other people, they've got a bank of things behind them that says, do you know what, I know I'm really good at football, I know I'm a great team player, I know there's a space where I really fit in. So that kind of armour that takes them through some of those challenges.
You know, Katharine, this mum says she's worried. She's worried about her daughter going out on a Saturday night or a Sunday night dressing in what she describes as a provocative fashion. And that's understandable, isn't it? You understand that as a mum?
I so do. I mean, we've got to be so careful about this, but I think as a parent, it's normal to feel like that, normal to be concerned at the image maybe that our children might not realise that they're portraying. And it's not just girls, it's guys as well. So I think, it's completely understandable.
What, your boys were...
Well, no, in terms of, I remember when I was younger, the fashion was not to wear a belt and you'd have your trousers half around your bum and, and I never thought that was the great look, but they liked it, so yeah.
No, you're right. So what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no universal standard for provocative. What's provocative in one culture is not in another, and in one generation is not in another. So we can't make too many assumptions about it. But what we can talk to our kids about is the fact that all our clothes communicate something. They might communicate that we're professional, that we are fashionable, that we're fun, that we're arty, and actually helping our kids to reflect on what do they want to communicate in their clothes, what makes them feel good. Saying to our daughters, that outfit, what is it about it for you that makes you feel really good? And when they say, well, it makes my legs look great, that's great if they can name aspects of themselves that they feel like this enhances and makes them feel good. But there's also space for saying, well, what do you think other people will see when they see you in that? And it might be that they say, actually, I think some people might judge me a little bit. And the conversation there is, well, okay, how do you feel about that? What would you like to do about that? What decisions do you want to make about that? Because ultimately, we want our young people to be able to make positive decisions based on what they want to communicate, choose their clothes based on what they think communicates well. It's got to be informed. But rather than us telling them what to wear and then not being allowed to wear things just because we've told them to, sooner or later, they're going to be making their own fashion choices. Let's help them do it well.
Brilliant. But you know what? I do think that parents almost have a right and a duty to quite often say what they feel. They might get it wrong. They might, there's one thing worse than having your mum and dad always on your back, and that's having nobody in your back. And as long as a kid believes that they are loved, that they're accepted, that sometimes even if we get it a bit wrong, even if they think we're a bit fuddy-duddy, we've got a right to... I always remember it was a girl, she was living rough on the streets of London, she was about 15, and she looked up and she said, my dad wanted me in at 9:30 at night on a school night. I hated him for it. And then she said this, I wish somebody cared what time I came in. And I think this girl will survive with her mum having a little goat over her skirt or even of this, as long as she knows that she is loved and accepted, and together they'll get through it. She started her letter to us with this phrase, I'm at my wit's end. And wit's end is a lonely place to be, isn't it? And that's why we have the podcast, that you and I, that Sarah and Katharine may know in this great task of either parenting or working with young people, we're not alone, we're getting through it together. Thanks for being with us for this episode of Raising Teens. Thanks to Sarah, thanks to Katharine, and we hope to see you again soon.
You have been listening to the Raising Teens podcast. For further information about our courses, resources and events, visit us at careforthefamily.org.uk.